You're at a highway rest stop. Maybe it's midnight, maybe it's 2 a.m. You get out to stretch and you hear it. A low diesel rumble coming from every direction. A whole row of semi-trucks, dark windows, nobody moving, not going anywhere. Just sitting there running all night. You walk past them on the way to the bathroom and you think, why is nobody turning these things off? Is the driver even awake? Doesn't that waste thousands of dollars in fuel? Is this even legal? Here's what most people assume. It's habit, or laziness, or that truckers just don't care. But the real reason those engines are running has nothing to do with any of that. It involves federal law, diesel physics, medical devices, and a supply chain problem that touches every refrigerator in America. And once you understand it, you'll never hear that rumble the same way again. Here's where you need to start. A semi-truck isn't just a vehicle. It's a home, an office, and a bedroom, all at the same time. The cab has a sleeper berth, a full bunk in the back, where drivers are legally required to rest for 10 hours between shifts under federal hours of service rules. Not a suggestion, federal law. So when that truck is sitting at a rest stop at midnight, the driver isn't being lazy. They're doing exactly what the law requires. And the engine running isn't negligence. It's the building's utility staying on while someone sleeps inside. But here's what makes it complicated. Diesel engines aren't like car engines. They don't run on spark plugs, they run on compression. Air gets squeezed so hard inside the cylinder that it heats up enough to ignite the fuel on its own. That process needs heat to work cleanly. Shut a diesel down in freezing temperatures, and you're asking it to do something it genuinely doesn't like. Cold oil doesn't flow properly. Cold fuel burns incomplete. Cold metal contracts in ways engineers account for at operating temperature, but not at rest. Every cold start below freezing puts real measurable stress on the engine before it's even moved an inch. There's a figure that gets cited in diesel engineering studies. 1 hour of idling causes wear on a diesel engine equivalent to roughly 80 miles of normal driving. Think about what that means for a fleet that shuts down and cold starts every single morning. Before the truck moves a wheel, it's already put miles on the engine. Leaving it running overnight isn't burning fuel for nothing. It's protecting a piece of equipment worth $150,000 or more from unnecessary damage. But engine wear is actually the secondary reason. Here's the first. When it's January at a truck stop in Wyoming, overnight temperatures can drop to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. That's cold enough to gel diesel fuel in the lines. Cold enough that a driver who shuts down and goes to sleep might wake up to an engine that won't start and a cab that's been dropping in temperature for 8 hours. The engine idles because the alternative isn't just inconvenient. In extreme cold, it's genuinely dangerous. Now here's the layer almost nobody thinks about. Studies show that somewhere between 28 and 40% of long-haul truck drivers have sleep apnea. It's one of the most common medical conditions in the profession. Long irregular hours, disrupted sleep patterns, and sedentary driving all contribute. And the standard treatment is a CPAP machine, a device that delivers continuous airflow while you sleep to keep the airway open. Without power, no CPAP. Without CPAP, a driver with sleep apnea doesn't get restorative sleep. A driver who hasn't slept properly is a safety risk on the road the next morning. So part of what's keeping that engine running is a medical device. The idle is in some cases a clinical necessity. Then there's the trailer, refrigerated trailers. Reefers in industry language carry temperature-sensitive cargo. Fresh produce, dairy, pharmaceuticals, insulin, vaccines. Some loads need to be held at temperatures as precise as 34 degrees Fahrenheit all night, not approximately 34. Exactly 34. If the engine shuts off and the refrigeration unit loses power and the trailer warms up over 8 hours, the load is gone. That's tens of thousands of dollars of cargo, sometimes medication that cannot be replaced on short notice, Lost because someone turned a key. So now you have engine protection, driver survival, a medical device, and a pharmaceutical cold chain all running off that one idling engine. And you're still not at the whole picture. Here's the part that sounds like it shouldn't be true. More than 30 states have anti-idling laws, fines, regulations, enforcement around exactly the kind of overnight idling you see at rest stops. But federal regulations carve out specific exemptions for sleeper berths in extreme temperatures, for medical equipment, and for temperature-sensitive cargo. One parked truck, two sets of rules, both applying simultaneously. The driver idling all night isn't breaking the law. In many cases, they're navigating an exemption inside a law specifically written for their situation. The industry did come up with a solution. It's called an APU, an auxiliary power unit, a separate small generator, roughly the size of a large toolbox, bolted to the frame of the truck. It runs the heat, the air conditioning, the power outlets, and sometimes the refrigeration unit without touching the main engine. Cleaner, cheaper per hour, and it satisfies most state anti-idling laws. Smart engineering that solved a real problem. But here's the catch. An APU costs between $8,500 and $12,500 installed. For a large fleet operation, that math eventually works. The fuel savings pay it back. For an independent owner-operator running on tight margins with a truck payment, insurance, fuel, and maintenance already competing for every dollar. That's a used car worth of upfront cost for a box on the side of their truck. So the main engine keeps running. Not because nobody thought of a better way, because the better way costs more than a lot of drivers can absorb right now. The math on idling is brutal when you write it out. A diesel at low idle burns roughly 1 gallon per hour. At current prices, call it $4 to $5 for a single overnight. One truck, one night. Multiply that by a fleet of 1,000 trucks running 5 nights a week, and you're in the millions of dollars a year. In fuel that moves nothing, hauls nothing, goes nowhere, just keeps a driver warm and a trailer cold. That's why APUs exist. That's why truck stops are building shore power hookups. Outdoor electrical outlets where a driver can plug the cab in like a phone charger and shut the engine down completely. That's why fleet GPS systems now track idle time as a cost line item the same way they track fuel consumption and tire wear. The industry knows what idling costs. The infrastructure to replace it just isn't everywhere yet. This is the part where the history matters. Long-haul trucking didn't always look like this. Go back to the 1940s. 2-lane highways, no interstates. Runs were short enough that drivers went home or paid for a motel. There were no sleeper berths because there were no runs long enough to need them. Then the interstate highway system started going in during the late 1950s and early 1960s, and everything changed. Suddenly, a driver could run from Chicago to Los Angeles without the road forcing a stop. Sleeper cabs showed up through the 1960s to match those longer routes. And the diesel engines of that era were genuinely brutal in cold weather. Brutal enough that mechanics at some truck depots had a specific nightly routine. Drain the oil out of the engines before they cooled down, store it indoors where it stayed warm, and pour it back in before the morning start. That's not a legend. That was the actual maintenance practice at some operations. Idling overnight was a massive improvement on that. So by the time the 1970s and 80s rolled around, leaving the engine running all night was simply how it was done. Baked into training, into fleet policy, into the culture. And habits baked that deep outlast the original problem, even when better solutions start arriving. Here's the thing you've probably never considered. You've been connected to this system your whole life. Strawberries in January? They rode in a reefer trailer that idled overnight at a distribution hub somewhere in Florida or California. The medication at your local pharmacy, the stuff that needs refrigeration, it moved through a cold chain that depended on idling at every overnight stop from the manufacturer to the warehouse to the store. The slightly higher price of fresh groceries versus canned? Part of that is cold chain logistics cost, and idle fuel is part of that number. The semi-truck you passed on the highway this morning, its driver legally rested last night with that engine running. And the federal law that requires that rest is the same law that makes a motel room impractical 5 nights a week. That rest stop you've driven past 100 times. The one that smells faintly of diesel at 3 in the morning. That's a temporary neighborhood. Drivers sleeping legally, running their required 10 hours, keeping their equipment warm, keeping their cargo cold, running their CPAP machines, waiting out the clock before they can legally get back on the road and deliver the thing you ordered 3 days ago. Now for the trade-off that's fair to name, diesel exhaust from idling isn't neutral. Fine particulate matter accumulates around rest stops and freight terminals. Neighborhoods near major truck corridors pushed for anti-idling laws for legitimate health reasons, and that pressure was valid. A fleet of 1,000 trucks idling 8 hours a night is burning thousands of gallons of diesel going nowhere and putting something into the air around it. That's real, and it's part of why the APU, shore power, and eventually full electric trucks matter. The change is happening. Electric APUs powered by battery packs are improving. Shore power infrastructure is expanding along major freight corridors. Some fleets are testing automatic shutdown systems that cut the engine when conditions allow and restart it before the cab temperature drops too far. And electric semi-trucks, still early, still expensive, still limited on range, change the idle equation entirely because their cab systems run off the same battery pack that drives the wheels. No engine to idle, no diesel to burn. The problem solves itself. But the gap between we have a better solution and every driver can afford the better solution is still wide. And until that gap closes, a lot of trucks are going to keep running through the night. So here's where you land. You thought you were looking at waste, a bad habit nobody bothered to fix. But what you were actually looking at was a federal rest law, the physics of diesel compression in cold air, a medical device keeping a sleep apnea patient safe, a trailer of vaccines staying at exactly the right temperature, a 70-year-old industry practice with completely logical roots, and an infrastructure problem that's being solved one truck stop and one APU at a time. That rumble you used to find irritating at a highway rest stop, that's the sound of the system that stocked your refrigerator this week. And if you want to know what that refrigerator cost the driver who hauled it, not in dollars, but in sleep, in miles, in the actual physical reality of living inside that cab, that's the next video.